This is bad. A high-level dungeon boss, a Cerberus, or a wingless dragon. The boss readies a fire attack against them. Worried, the party's tank says he's not sure if he can block again. But then he's in shock. Right there in front of them, dancing, a goblin was walking straight into the boss's line of fire. Confused, the adventurers wonder what a goblin is even doing there. Then the Cerberus unleashes its attack, but the goblin dodges it. Next, it obliterates the boss with a single strike. How is that possible? Did he cut it? No, he crushed a high-level Cerberus. And why was a monster attacking another monster? Suddenly, the tank points, saying there was someone up there in the hills. It was that guy, the one who summoned that goblin. The scene cuts, and we see an office drone suffering at his 9-to-5 job. He thinks that, ultimately, he's a goblin, being the weakest one there. He was destined to stay in a low-level dungeon forever, just like a goblin. Even if some people win the lottery and get rich overnight, at the end of the day, a goblin will always be a goblin, no matter how much XP it gets. Just then, he overhears some people in the background talking about Senior Chif. Seems like he's been so busy in Heaven's Door lately that he hasn't been showing up for work. Sounded like something about him unlocking some hidden class. Heaven's Gate was a high-level VR game that was all the rage recently. The game's experience was so real, it could even make people forget about their own reality. Of course, since that technology was so advanced, the rigs were extremely expensive. However, thanks to some internet cafes trying to ride the wave, broke-ass guys like him can get a taste. And as the game became super popular and demand grew, real-world money started flowing into the game's environment. When items start getting traded for real cash, it changes everything, and a ton of people started using the game as their job. He even got excited about the idea, but the novelty had worn off for him too. The guy was basically a blue-collar worker in the real world and a grinder in the game. After so much work, he still had to work even more. Even in the stupid game, he was in debt. Outraged, he complains that this is all crap and wonders when he's going to become a legendary hero or go out with a teammate and marry her. No matter how much of this junk he mined, he never got anything. But things change when he finds an advanced healing crystal. Excited, he thinks it must be worth at least 300,000.
It's mine, precious, precious.
Suddenly, someone approaches him asking what was that.
Precious.
It was a healthy female followed by 2 males, healthy and consistent. She notes that she's seen him mining in this area for days, concluding that he must have a high mining skill. Getting closer, she turns to him with the most charming look she can muster, explaining that they were exploring the dungeon but ran into a huge crystal blocking their path. Even though her party is strong, none of them know a thing about mining, so she's hoping someone as skilled as him could help. The scam is there, whoever wants to fall for it. He replies that while he does have a high mining skill, but his level is too low to enter that dungeon safely. The group's tank says he just needs to tag along and mine the ores. They'll take care of the monsters.
So you think that just because I'm dwarf, I'm useless in a fight?
Thinking it over, the protagonist figures that if he joins their party, he could get some XP and maybe even snag some high-level ores. All things considered, it didn't seem like a bad deal.
Horse.
Still, even with that in mind, he wasn't sure if it was safe to go that deep into the cave. Even if he didn't actually die, the game still had that. Just then, the woman gets closer, holding his hand, and says that her ideal type of man is actually a guy with strong, mining arms just like him.
Sure.
While the vixen caressed his arm, the protagonist replies that he can help them. Simp, absolute simp, this protagonist. He's got potential, believe me. No spoilers, but the guy's totally unhinged. Sweating bullets, he asked himself what the hell he's doing here. In front of him was a level 7 gray wolf. Even if the monsters weren't as strong as he thought, he was still way weaker than them. Facing death, his life flashing before his eyes, he regrets being such a damn simp. The guy even wets himself, crying out for his mom. But in that moment, the source of all worldly conflict yells at him not to move. Unleashing a fire skill, she quickly eliminates the wolf. Then she walks over, asking if he's hurt anywhere.
And there it is. There's a sucker born every minute.
Thanking her for the help, he's impressed that she managed to take out the whole pack with a single attack. With a somewhat sad face, Katarine says she was so scared and begs him please not to leave her side because it's too dangerous. Still a bit in shock, he starts to think that maybe this is the love story he's been looking for all along.
Oh no, stop MC, don't let me down. I've got faith in you, man.
The other guy in the party, while dodging wolves, tells him he can relax because they're not the type of people to mess around in a dungeon like this.
The guy says that literally while playing with the wolf cubs. He's a damn bastard.
Then he promptly takes them out of the gene pool. Excited, he comments there's a suspicious ore deposit that can only be broken with a very high mining level, and they were there to investigate it. He says they ran into trouble because they figured investing points in skills like mining seemed like a waste of time. That's why we now need help from people like him. People like me? What does he mean with people like me? He starts to feel inferior, wondering if they think he's stupid. These guys couldn't even mine without him. Then with a serious face, he says he's not going to let this slide. And if they thought he didn't have any fighting skills, so he rears back for his ultimate attack and punches the stone, admitting he really doesn't have any. While the protagonist was chipping away at his little rocks, the dwarf asks the other member if he was sure about that intel, because if there's nothing behind that ore, it'll be a huge loss. With a serious face, he replies that it better be true, because otherwise his informant will pay for wasting their time in this shithole dungeon. In the background, the MC thinks that he's so used to being looked down on and risking his life for pennies that he kind of doesn't even care anymore. But that's exactly what makes him even angrier. Anyway, he just needed to finish his job, get his cash, and leave just like always. After all, this was just another job like any other. Suddenly, the spot he was trying to break finally gave way, triggering a chain reaction that caused the entire wall to crumble. Behind those rocks was an entrance to a secret dungeon. They were in shock, unable to believe they actually found one. A dungeon like this gave special, extremely unique rewards, and they could even get a secret class. This was basically like us winning the lottery. What do you mean by we? At that moment, one of the party members already positioned himself behind the MC, who, excited, was saying he could finally change his life now, just like Mr. Cha. But then he took a critical hit to the back, sending him to the ground, unable to breathe. Katarine remarked how hard it was to find a secret dungeon like this one. She couldn't believe it was in a low-level dungeon like this, and on top of that, all you needed to access it was a stupid mining skill. That's why I always say, never trust a hot girl who shows up out of nowhere. Subsequently, the girl asked him not to be mad at her. After all, they had fought alone and all he did was tag along. Then the protagonist realized they had been plotting this from the beginning. They knew about the dungeon the whole time. The other member grabbed him by the hair, asking if he understood now. Of course, they wouldn't waste their time in a worthless hole like that if they didn't already know. The guy then punched him so hard the protagonist flew to the other side of the cave. A while later, he woke up, unable to believe he was still there and that those guys hadn't killed him. Maybe they had an ounce of decency after all. In the end, he was saved by the advanced healing crystal, which automatically kicked in when his HP hit rock bottom, bringing him back to 100%.
Damage! My money!
Then he noticed the secret dungeon was still open. This meant no one had cleared it yet. There's no way I'm leaving here empty-handed after losing my precious crystal. I don't give a damn. I'm going to crash this party and change my life too. Determined, he says that to everyone who ever looked down on him, he will become their worst nightmare.
Wait for me, you bastards! The glory awaits me. To hell with the stairs. The deal is looting.
Falling to the ground, he was now finally inside the hidden dungeon with only 20 hit points left. In front of him was a huge goblin sitting on a throne. This secret dungeon was the goblin's sanctuary. Seeing this, the protagonist was confused, wondering why a goblin was sitting on a throne looking so smug. He started exploring the place, not wanting to believe that all it had was one ridiculous goblin. Secret dungeons were supposed to be really hard to complete, but everything here seemed way too easy. But then he grew uneasy with the silence of the place, wondering where those idiots went. Suddenly, he tripped over something on the ground. There on the floor was the dwarf, completely wiped out and in an eternal sleep. Scared, Kolu broke into a cold sweat, wondering what was happening. Still in the process of eternal farewell, the dwarf asked if by any chance he had a resurrection skill. Tulu replied no, asking if he wasn't hitting the revive button to try and not lose access to the secret dungeon. At that moment, a status window popped up with a warning. This dungeon has an extremely high difficulty far above your level. Please exit immediately. While in shock and trying to understand what was happening, he heard a scream in the background. That voice, it was. Heading toward the sound, he saw the other party member being held by a monster and Katarine was pinned under its foot. He couldn't understand what was happening and wondered if this wasn't supposed to be a goblin sanctuary. So what the hell was this horrendous thing in front of him? A level 80 beast. You have got to be kidding me. The beast starts to lift the guy and gives him a very unpleasant suck. That was for sure the worst suck of his life. This was definitely the worst case scenario. There had been plenty of games that tried to be as realistic as possible, but Heaven's Doors had gone too far by including the sense of touch. That meant you could feel pain in the game as if it were real. Of course, there were Seiki systems, so monsters of the same level or weaker didn't cause that much pain. But if a much stronger monster hit you, that was a different story.
Please save me! Me save you? Are you crazy, woman? What the hell do you think I can do against this thing? I'm out of here.
In that game, the pain and trauma didn't just disappear when the character revived. It directly affected the person's brain. In the worst case scenario, it could even lead to brain death.
Thanks, see ya. I'm billing out.
He thought that he couldn't, under any circumstances, let that thing touch him. And it wasn't his fault anyway. Those guys had abandoned him first, so they could just consider this karma. I have to survive. Someone has to live to tell the tale. Suddenly, a status window appeared saying the Goblin Lord felt a connection with his cowardice and weakness. What the hell is this now? Goblin Lord, what the hell is that? Even though he knew he was weak and cowardly, he refused to be looked down on by a damn goblin. Gritting his teeth, he asked if they thought he chose to be this way. If he had even a little bit of strength, he wouldn't have run, at least not right off the bat. Just then, Katarine was turned into a pancake. We can now officially say she was no longer a healthy specimen. All Tulu wanted was a decent job where no one looked down on him. He wanted to fight monsters, not chip away at little rocks. All they wanted was to play and have fun, just like everyone else. But because of the debts his unknown parents left him, he grew up unable to do anything he wanted. And now this pathetic system was calling him weak. Outraged, he asked how he couldn't feel offended by this. "Who the hell do you think you are to look down on me? You're just a damn goblin. Are you messing with me? A goblin is just a goblin. You're just trash like me. Don't you dare think you can look down on me." Then the status window stated that he was now an honorary goblin and that goblins would help him whenever he needed. You have completed the requirements for the hidden class, Goblin Summoner. Not to say anything, but this is already better than solo leveling.
Goblin Summoner? Is that a secret class? Are you kidding me? I don't want this crap. You can have it.
Even so, the system said his class was now Goblin Summoner. Just then, the Goliath Suck appeared behind him, wanting to suck him in.
Shit, too late. A level 80 suck is too much for me. I'm gonna die. Rise, my goblin warrior, and get sucked in my place.
Ugly son of a bitch. If this were a game item, it would be totally OP just for the meme. I can totally see some ADN with Hacker using this precious goblin. Just as expected, a pot-bellied goblin with a total perverted face. This was the best skill he could have ever acquired. Go, my goblin warrior. Get sucked in my place. The creature of violent suckings charges at the goblin with a war cry.
Now it's time for me to go. May the spirit of Kazu-senpai be with you in this battle.
Out of nowhere, the goblin lands an insane critical hit on the beast. When the suck-deep suck falls to the ground, he just stands there, completely confused. What the hell is this? His screen floods with notifications telling him his XP had leveled up. On top of that, he had unlocked 2 new skills, Feed Goblin and Goblin Walk. The little big nose guy also gets a ton of XP.
We won, guys.
Cholo can't believe that this ugly, drooling little creature had already reached the max level.
What the hell does this mean? I wonder if I found the 80M spat?
Meanwhile, Katarine was screaming with joy after taking that violent suck. A guy runs up to her, calling her name. Ripping her headset off, he breaks into a cold sweat, realizing instantly what happened. This was shock-induced retirement, and there was no coming back from it. Back in the game, our goblin is going insane, attacking and screaming at everything in sight. He was simply killing every monster with a single hit, no matter what it was. Tulu's now living the good life.
Hey goblin, give it a break. I can't carry anything anymore.
This is what happens when the ADM leaves his stuff lying around. Now he's already level 31 and hasn't even used his status points yet. He explains that he cleared the secret dungeon as soon as he defeated the boss. But since all the party members who betrayed him died, he has no way to leave except by dying. That goblin had cleared the entire dungeon by itself and hadn't leveled up a single time until now. Even with Chalo at level 31, he still had no information available about the goblin summon. He wonders if it makes sense for a low-level creature like this to be so strong. Maybe this is some kind of bug.
But it doesn't matter. If it's a bug, I have to make the most of it.
Later, at the bank, a teller calls for number 36. She says that, adding everything up including the wolf pelts, it comes to a total of 70 DOLARES. She then asks if he wants the amount to go straight to his account. This makes him unable to believe you could convert items directly into cash at the bank. The influence of that game was truly absurd. So he asks if he could transfer the money to another account and mentions he still has other items to sell, including a deep sucker's membrane and heart. But when she looks up the items and does the math, she looks completely bewildered. Cholo wonders why she just ran off since she hadn't even finished helping him.
Can you believe this? Nobody respects me in this world.
Just then, he is led to another room with the manager, who offers him tea. Is your tea good, my boy?
It's cold.
The manager then apologizes, saying he must have forgotten to boil the water properly. Cholo gets straight to the point, asking why the manager called for him. He just came in to trade some items. The manager replies that it's nothing serious, just that he thought there might be better places for him to keep his money, so he figured it'd be good to talk to him. The manager comments that leaving all that money in his savings account would be a waste, and says their bank has great investment options, meaning he'd be earning without doing anything. Cholo is a bit confused, saying he understands it's important to make your money grow, but he doesn't think it's the manager's job to call him in for a chat over $1,000,001 tops. No. That's poor people stuff. The heart and membrane of a supreme sucker are worth $230 million at today's rate. That came out to about $160,000.
What is that, Paul?
Cholo runs straight back into the game, scoops the goblin into his arms, and says he's now managed to pay off 10% of his debts. Damn, only 10%. What kind of debt is this, my man? If he had racked up that kind of debt where I'm from, he'd already be 6 feet under with his organs sold to a new owner. Oh, you cute little bastard. You came to see your daddy without even being called. Who said goblins are ugly creatures? They're so cool. No, you're ugly as hell. Cholo says that at least while they're in the city, he should unsummon him, but he can't. So Gobo keeps following him with that crazy perverted face. Everyone is staring at them, confused, and they even start laughing, finding it absurd to see a goblin walking around the city. They say he's ugly, so ugly that when he took a DNA test, the lab asked for a do-over with Photoshop. So ugly his ID photo comes with a jump scare warning. Cholo gets pissed because he isn't even a goblin, he's catching the hate right along with him. Just then, Godo bumps into an adventurer who stops in front of him asking, "What the hell is this?" wanting to know why there's a goblin walking the city streets. The guy is already reaching for his weapon, just because I'm green. It seems the guy was famous. He was Pantom the Annihilator and part of a guild called Vision. The protagonist immediately thinks this is bad. There's no way a guy named Annihilator is going to be a reasonable person. Desperate, the protagonist yells that it's not a monster, but Pantom is already charging, raising his giant weapon and going after Gobo. However, Gobo just swings his log, sending the guy flying. Nobody can resist Gobo's heavy log. Gobo the heavy log laugher. The PK mode is forcibly activated, which means the pain won't go past the maximum limit to prevent stronger players from abusing others. But Panton was already wiped out, and the people on the streets start screaming that a goblin just killed a man. Tense, Kulu thinks that if they find out Gobo isn't a monster but a summon, he'll end up becoming a target. Then a guy shows up making fun of Panton, saying that was extremely embarrassing. How could he be messing around with a goblin, a monster not even worthy of a fight? Along with him are 4 other people. The guild leader, and Gup points his sword towards Gobo, saying he'll have to take responsibility for messing with their guild. Tulu thinks the situation is getting ugly way too fast. There's no chance Gobo will lose to them, but if he goes around wiping everyone out, it's definitely going to be a huge problem. So Tulu calls for calm, saying he'll take care of the goblin himself. But Guk asks who the hell he thinks he is to meddle in the guild's affairs and declares that, if necessary, he'll kill him too. Trying to argue, Tolo says their image will look terrible if they all gang up on a single goblin. But just then, Gobo has already used Rock Throw, hitting another guild member directly and killing him instantly. With no other options, the protagonist decides to make a strategic retreat. While he was running, an old man appears, telling him to go this way. Cholo asks who he is, but the old man replies there's no time to explain, telling him to hurry. And Cholo ends up going in, but just as he entered, he runs out with the old man hot on his heels, holding a sledgehammer, yelling that this will be his funeral. Suddenly, a status window pops up, making him complain that he's already too busy trying to escape. The window shows that the Goblin Lord was impressed with his cleverness and attacking after making the enemy lower their guard, and because of that, he earned a Goblin point. This makes him irritated since first that Goblin had called him weak and ugly, and now it was even calling him a cheater. So he stops, thinking that to begin with, he hadn't even done anything wrong. With a determined look, he says it was them who were attacking for no reason. So Cholu tells the Goblin to pay close attention, saying that he's sick of being treated like trash and of being ridiculed just because he looked like Smagal. He then declares that from now on, they will destroy the Evision Guild.
How cute! Look at the brothers playing together.
And a Yumlook runs across the rooftops with Archer Jan right behind him. Jan asks if he really thought it was necessary to come along to take down a guy like that, saying she could easily handle it herself. I was already missing the healthy ones. It's already bad enough seeing ugly people in real life, but now I have to see them in a manga too. That's not gonna work. Yumlook tells her not to underestimate him because even though it's a goblin and even though Panton was the weakest member of the guild, he had been defeated with a single blow. There was definitely something strange about this creature. Suddenly, they hear some screaming. The completely crazy old man from before lands behind them.
Your gun gets clapped.
Quickly, Yumlook turns to strike, but the blow simply deals no damage at all. He finally realizes that what he saw before wasn't an illusion. This was bad. Definitely he was going to die if he got hit. When Gobo moves to finish the attack, an arrow deflects his weapon just a little and ends up saving a Yumlook. In the background, Diane asks why he's just standing there, and if he was planning on letting himself be killed by a goblin. It starts to sink in that he's facing a goblin. How could a low-level creature like that deal 1,000,000 damage? They must be using some kind of trick. Annoyed, he thinks that he doesn't know exactly what's happening. Activates the Extreme Evil skill. With this, he became 90% slower, but all of his attacks became critical hits. Confused, Diane asks why he's using that since it was just a goblin. Yumlook replies that she didn't need to worry and that this skill can behave like a passive. However, she asks what kind of passive costs half of someone's mana. Charging forward, he activates another skill, Footwork of the Inverted Blades, which gave him 30% more attack damage and a 50% lower critical hit chance. This way, he believes he'll put an end to this with a single attack. Sighing, Diane says he better finish this quickly before someone sees them. She then activates a skill called Gale Arrows, saying she didn't want to be seen using all these skill combos against a goblin. Her skill also nullified any effect that reduced speed within its designated area. Now Yumlook is charging forward with everything buffed to the max. Confident, he says that this was pathetic and that the game was now over. However, as he passes by Gobo using his ultimate attack, he notices something strange. In shock, he says that wasn't possible. Turning around, Gobo is still there, laughing as if nothing had happened. Next, Yumguk goes flying and becomes a wall decoration, and I don't even need to tell you that he's gonna from F instantly. That log is a total cheat, huh? Who's going to take out who with a single blow? Why do we say that only after you've hit max mastery with the wood? In shocked, Jan feels the admin's log approaching. She can't understand what happened. That shadow is looking a little strange, isn't it? Can't do that, ADM. Can't do that. Laughing, Tolu approaches saying that the goblin had been summoned by him.